212 greetings, Mwari, Hotep, Uncle Justin Neb, life, prosperity, and health as spoken in the ancient Kemetic language. Hotep means peace, Rastafari, and African power for all African people. I want to say greetings and welcomes to everybody joining me right now. Just want to make sure that kings and queens can hear my voice. So if you can hear my voice, hit the 9 button right now. You know, say 9 is one of them numbers of completion among many other things. So I just want to make sure that heads can hear me. If you can hear me, hit the 9 button, and coincidentally we've got 9 people watching at the moment, and we know that number is going to increase as we get along. You know what I mean? So yeah, we give thanks, we give thanks, we give thanks. All right, we got some people hitting at the 9. Bigging up my brother M.A. Brown, you done know my bro. My sister Melanated Goddess is in the house, you know what I mean? Kaz Rudy, C.A. Levi, Two Rock, greetings my brother. I'm not sure what is not. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but it's cool. Love for being here anyway. My brother E Black is in the house and is most definitely in the house. Yes indeed, kings and queens. As always, we ask you, remind you, if you have not already, to hit the like button, because you know hitting that like button increases, you know, it's this video's presence on the algorithm and these things, you know what I mean, so more people can get to know. Last time we had a brother calling from all Ivory Coast, you know what I'm saying? So we love that motherland energy, you know what I'm saying? So we're looking for more of that motherland energy today. So hit that like button, kings and queens, and do feel free to share the link for this one as well, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's going to be a good show today. It's going to be a good show today. We're going to be going in, for those who joined me for the last live where we were talking to brother Dalian Adofo, you will know that I've been doing this series here on Afrikan Spirituality, and there's gonna be more, you know, kings and queens. I got a good announcement for you later on in the show. I have a brilliant next show coming up in a couple weeks time, you know what I mean? So we're looking forward to that. But this is the follow-up with Dalian Adofo. We were doing a brief overview of African spirituality in general, you know what I mean? And we used Ifa and Akom, which are the spiritual systems of the Yoruba and the Akan or Ashanti people as an examples, as 2 examples of African spiritual systems, kings and queens, you know, and so that was beautiful. But we want to deal with this one today because we overstand and understand and understand that African spirituality, you know, is very present, yeah, extremely very present in the Americas, most notably in the Caribbean, kings and queens, you know what I'm saying? And at whatever point you think we traveled there, we understand that the traditions of our ancestors are very much present there. And so we have with us a sister by the name of Michelle Yaa Asantewa. And with Sister Yaa Asantewaa this evening, we will be just going into some of the expressions of African spirituality that we carried with us across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean. So before I introduce my sister fully, I just want to let kings and queens know, you know, that I'm a spoken word artist, and I ain't been on stage for a while, but I will be on stage this coming Sunday at Alchemy, you know what I'm saying? Alchemy, as hosted by Sister Demi Ma and Sister JJ Soul, kings and queens, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's just taking place at Juju's Bar and Stage, you know what I'm saying? Juju's Bar and Stage on Sunday the 10th of February from 7 p.m. If you want more information, check out alchemy_nights on Instagram. Alchemy_nights on Instagram. Looking forward to that, you know. I'm feeling to drop some exclusives on that night, you know, things that I ain't never performed before. And they got a live band as well, so I'm feeling to get busy with the band, you know what I mean? So we'll see how that takes place. I'm just feeling quite nice about this performance, so I'm just letting you know, for those who are in the city of London, you get me? Big up my brother Scattered Minds in the chat. Welcome, my brother. You know, so yeah, I still don't know what you're saying, too, Rock, you know. Yeah, Hotep means peace, you know what I mean? Hotep means peace, you know what I mean? So we're bringing that peace and love, Hotep energy to our show this evening. And with that said, without further ado, let me just make sure that my sister Yaa Asantewaa is coming through loud and clear. Are you there, Sister Yaa Asantewaa?
Greetings, I am indeed.
Beautiful. Sounding loud and clear, right there, sounding very loud and clear. Kings and Queens, once again, just lick the 9 button if you can hear Sister Yaa Asantewaa very loud and clear coming through. You know what I mean? The land of internet right about now through the live. Click that 9 button if you can hear our sister loud and clear. Our sister Yaa Asantewaa is, among many other things, Kings and Queens, you know, like a well-studied individual on the African spiritual systems in the Americas in general, the Caribbean, well-traveled and well-studied academically. And so, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, I'm just going to get you to begin. Know what is your journey as regards to African spirituality as a woman and also as an academic, and what qualifies you to kind of be speaking on this particular issue today?
Okay, thank you so much, Brother ShakaRa, for inviting me onto your show, and I think it's fabulous what you're doing in terms of bringing African spirituality to the a wider discussion on cultural identities in African communities. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my journey has been one which began from my academic study at university. So it came about as a consequence of an experience that I had there in my penultimate semester, last but one semester at university. Mm-hmm. And I had an experience which would ordinarily, I suppose, be called, they would medically determine it as a breakdown or something like that. Mm. And which meant that I couldn't complete that degree, it was my first degree actually. And so eventually, to cut the long story, I wanted to understand what it was exactly that happened to me during that time, because it was quite, in my conscious mind, to me, what happened was spiritual, and I managed somehow to avoid the institutions which I was well aware of prior to that experience that our peoples have been subjected to over many, many years. So I was kind of aware of that. So whilst this thing was happening to me, I was at the same time terrified of being institutionalized. So I implored upon my family to somehow get me back to Guyana from where I am. And they didn't want to do that, but I managed to do that outside of them. Went back there and I stayed there for a year, and that year was very instrumental in terms of my rerouting and regrowth into a kind of like, well, think about what happened, some reflectiveness and so on. And then I was able to return to the UK and now to evaluate what that experience really was. Okay. And I decided I would go return and finish my my studies, but this time, instead of doing as my thesis or my dissertation, instead of doing hair and identity, which was going to be my big dissertation, I would instead do African spiritual traditions, and I would look, because my discipline is English literature. So, you know, so I had to focus it in, and I wanted to look at the way African spiritual retentions are reflected in literature, because that's the brief that I had to do. And so I chose 3 women's texts to look at, which are Mile by Erna Brodba, Itatuba by Marcy Conde, and one by Toni Morrison, Beloved. Yes. And that helped me to navigate my own experiences. And so that was my route into trying to understand, one, what happened to me, 2, the fact that some of these practices, these spiritual traditions, have been discredited. And so I wanted to, as my title of that dissertation suggested, recredit them and to celebrate them and to understand them, and thereby understanding myself. And that led to me doing my master's, taking it a bit further, and then finally to my PhD, which I was now then going to focus on the Guyanese aspect, because those weren't anything to do with Guyana. But I wanted to understand, well, if you have Mile in in Jamaica, and you have Tituba, who that book is really about a practitioner. He was outcasted as a witch, one of the Salem witches in a trial. If you had that and you had that kind of practice, and Maurice Condé was looking at that experience, and then you had Toni Morrison looking at Beloved and talking about ancestral energies and ancestral spirits and so on. But what's the Guyanese? Where's the Guyanese traditions in as reflected in literature? And that's how I came upon looking at Komfa, and then we can talk eventually about the longer journey of now extrapolating that from this is the Guyanese version. How then did I land into looking at, Orisha and all these sorts of things? It all started to connect because you're dealing with the retentions from Africa.
Okay, all right. So we're going to come back to that. Obviously, one of the first questions that I asked Dalian earlier in the show was this idea of the term African spirituality, and whether or not we find validity in it or not. And now you know Brother Dalian very well, so you will know that he does find validity in it.
Yeah.
Do you find validity in the term African spirituality, or is it not sufficient, or do we need to find another term or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's valid, and I think we need something that grounds us. What I've certainly observed recently is the wealth of interest that. I mean, I don't know how to do hashtag searches or whatever necessarily, but I know that if I am trying to organize something and African spirituality is mentioned or whatever, there's this growth of an interest in it. Yeah. So, and in terms of obviously organizing under a kind of an umbrella, I think that's good. But as long as we're respectful of the individual elements and individual practices within that umbrella, I think the term is definitely valid.
All right, beautiful kings and queens. So yeah, that's just a little taste there, of the energy and the vibration that you're going to be getting from our sister Yaa Asantewaa. Little later on, I'm going to ask you, because I was blessed to attend a ceremony, an Oshun ceremony that she led last year, kings and queens, that she invited us to, and so we're going to get into a little bit of that, what those kind of ceremonies entail and how they've manifested themselves in the Americas, so do stay tuned. I want to let you also know that Sister Yaa Asantewaa is a publisher by profession, and you can find her at waywivewordz.com. Is it, sister?
Yeah, .com.
Way Wive Wordz, and with it's spelled like W-I-V-E, family, so that's how we're sitting in with right now. So Way with W-I-V-E words.com, and check out our sister's work. You can find her books there also. Right, let's get into this thing. So you've mentioned Komfa, and last week last week when I spoke to Dalian, we dealt with the issue of Akom. Now the words kind of could sound similar. Is there a relationship between Akom of the Akan people and Komfa of the Guyanese?
Yeah, just to mention before that words in the website is WORDZ, because people just quickly. But definitely, yes, Akom and Guyanese Komfa are very much linked. The word that Komfa comes from Akom, and it comes from the Akomfo or the Akomfo, the traditional priests in Ghana that are still obviously practicing, along with Akom, which is still a practice that involves drumming and trance and so on. So Komfa comes from there, though I doubt too many Guyanese actually know that necessarily. They just know it's called Komfa and they don't necessarily know where that is from. But that's where, the research has linked it back to. And even when I went myself to Ghana, not necessarily actually at the time for research purposes, but I was stumbling upon the term Akomfo and Akomfoa and so on. And it was like, that sounds like, this word that I've been used to all my life hearing. So, yeah, and it means in Guyana, Komfa refers to when you go into the trance state, when you're catching the spirit, which is in Ghana, it's like Akom, which is the practice, but it's also if you go into that trance state as well. So you can dance Akom. Guyana, you catch Komfa. which links to other forms of dancing in the spirit around the Caribbean and so on.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll delve deeper into that in a sec. But for now, more broadly speaking, yeah, in your experience, how prevalent are expressions of African spirituality in the Caribbean? Is it a little minor thing? Is it very prevalent? Are there many systems or just a few, or what? How prevalent is this thing? And can you give some examples?
Oh, you see, when I did my research, although you briefed me as in well-traveled and all that, I'd love to say that I was well-traveled. I feel that there's so much more of traveling that I need to do. For example, you know, it's a dream to get to Haiti, Cuba, Brazil, and all the places where where those expressions are most well known, and I didn't get to do that. I didn't even during my PhD get to go to Guyana, so I didn't do field. I did because there was one other book. I did some field, but I couldn't attribute it. I couldn't use it in the way I wanted to in the document. But generally, from my reading and from my own experiences, I would say that the retentions of African spiritual expressions is as far-reaching as wherever Africans were taken to the Caribbean and the diaspora. That's it. It's just that because of the levels of demonization and discrediting, they just were pushed back and pushed underground. So where you find a collection of Africans in communities, especially rural communities, you will find those variants of African retention. It's just that more research is needed in particular areas to bring them to the fore. So I would say it's an underground prevalence, if you like.
Right. Point taken. So let's give the viewers some examples of some of the systems that you've come across. Okay,
so the ones I particularly looked at in my research are Haitian voodoo, which is quite semi well known, Cuban Santeria. We have Brazilian candomblé. You have big drum, which I didn't really touch on in my research, but that's Grenada and Caracou. You have Orisha, an overview of Orisha religion in, say, Trinidad, but they've got like spiritual Baptists and they've got different and you have in where's the other place, Suriname. Suriname, you have Winti, and you have in Juka, which are different groups, and that's associated with the Maroons. And then you have in Jamaica, you have Mile, you have Kamina, you have revivalism, which still, you know, these things are there, but they're like, you know, they're a bit underground and a bit, you know, you have to hunt in places to find them. So those are some of the main ones. But throughout, there's an overarching one, which in his book, Patrick Taylor looks at, called Nation Dance. So you will have nation dances mostly in the Eastern Caribbean areas. And so, for example, I haven't really been able to look at French Guyana, anything there, but so I wouldn't know the names of those. I went to Puerto Rico, which is, you know, and we found some retentions there as well. But again, I wasn't able to locate what they were called. Necessarily, but they were still, that particular version was linked to Yoruba. So it was linked to Orisha. And so on.
All right, beautiful. You say you're not well traveled, but you're more traveled than I am. So, you know, I do share that desire though to to travel to Haiti. Suriname is a place that I definitely want to travel to. Not only because of the African spiritual retention, but because places like Suriname and Costa Rica were strongholds of the Garvey movement. You know what I mean? So I definitely want to, you know, kind of soak up some of that energy. But yeah, we'll all get there in the end, sis. You know what I mean?
We will.
you know. But yeah, so I wanna start. Well, let's look at Mayo and Obeah, yeah, to be
Okay.
and then we'll get into Komfa in a sec, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now obviously most people would know about or would have heard of Obeah. They would probably know very little about Obeah, but they probably heard of Obeah. Less people would have heard of Mayo, yeah. So what is Mayo, and what is there a relationship between Obeah and Mayo?
Okay, Mayo is found in Jamaica. It's still practiced there, and it's an initiatory, they call it initiatory practice, whereby you ingest this is how you go through the process. You take a potion that kind of induces a sort of a trance-like state, and you go through this ritual to become a Mayalist or a Maya practitioner, and then after a while you're given another potion that relieves you of the trance state. They are Mayalists are people who would have been like, they're like the Komfa, the traditional priests in Ghana, say, or like the Komfa practitioners.
Yes.
And so they are preservers of the well-being of the community. And so for example, they recognize that the communities is ordered in a particular way, and where they recognize good forces exist and bad forces exist in the community. And the bad forces do things like steal people's spirit, if you like. So they're called the duppy thieves, or you know, they do involved in capturing someone's spirit. So the Mayalists, the Maya practitioners, what their role is to seek out those spirit thieves.
Yes.
And extricate them from the communities, or punish them, basically. So
right.
And they would go through through villages and do dances. You know, you get into a kind of a trance state and do the dances, and sometimes in doing those dances they would seek out who those negative entities in the communities might be. And it's very well depicted in the book that I mentioned earlier called Mayo by Erna Bodba.
Yeah.
And in terms of its link to Obeah, so this is where it has links with Obeah. So for example, you have the Maya men who will also be skilled in the use of herbs.
Yes.
You know, sort of magical rituals and this kind of things, just as the Obeah practitioner would be. But the difference would be is that some of the Obeah practitioners dabble with what the Mayalists would recognize as those things that are anti the community, that are malevolent to the community. So they would challenge those Obeah, particular Obeah men, Obeah women. Yes. And so obviously Obeah needs its own discussion, and that's where they have their connection, is that the Mayalists, they are about the safeguarding and the well-being and the preserving of the community unity, and to recognize everyone in that society, everyone in that community, and where they feel that they're come to know that there is anything that's operating against that well-being, they will challenge that very dominantly. Now, in terms of what happens with the conflation between an Obeah man or woman in terms of the negative form, because we need to talk about the fact that Obeah actually isn't a negative thing. It's just how it's how it's come to be. So we can talk about that. But I just want to make the distinction between, or the connections between Maya and Obeah, Obeah men, is that during the period of enslavement, the Maya men, women, did to the enslavers or the enslavers, as they gave them the poisons that they were skilled in using.
Right.
Yeah? And so did the Obeah men and women who were they were out and out. They were about we're using this for negative and what have you. But in their case, for the Obeah man, this negative is because the white man is possessing our brethren. So we're going to use the potion to attack them.
Yes.
So what happened was the work of the negative Obeah practitioners, let's say, and the work of the Mayalists became conflated in that slavery context.
Right.
And so that's why it's come down as Obeah men are negative, and this confusion with mild practitioners and so on. It's just because both were using the same process to challenge the slavers. And one of them was Taki of the 1760 rebellion, as they call it. And he was believed to be a Mile man. And so what he did was he called to arms, if you like, the community, and he gave them this potion, and so that they would have this sense of invincibility when they would go and fight in the rebellion. And after they did the fight, then they would have the antidote, if you like. And if you're really interested in how it works practically, I would mention Erna Brodber's novel to really look at that for it.
It's on the bookshelf. Erna Brodber, the book called Bio. It's a novel, but like oftentimes we learn so much about our traditions and our history through the creative word. I'm saying fiction as well as non-fiction. That is the African way. That's why we have a Nancy story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in a sense, possibly the most explicit and pervasive expression of African spirituality in the Caribbean is the presence of Brer Nancy. I'm constantly surprised by the extent to which how pervasive he is, not just in the English speaking, but in the French and the Spanish speaking Caribbean. You'll find Brer Nancy, you know what I mean? So it's a powerful symbol. All right, so I mean, let's have some of that conversation on Obeah then, because as you said, you mentioned Chief Taki, and I swear, if I ever get the chance to do a film, it will be on. I'm telling you, it will be on Chief Taki. You know what I mean? But yeah, because I love that energy. Something about that energy just resonates with me a whole heap. But when it comes to Obeah, now obviously, like the two most popular expressions of African spirituality, or should I say infamous expressions of African spirituality that we hear of from the Caribbean is voodoo and Obeah. And it just so happens that the most successful, these were the two systems that were used in the most and arguably the second most successful rebellions that we had against enslavement. It's just interesting that dynamic, you know what I'm saying? But so with regards to Obeah, as you mentioned, we only know about it as something negative and wicked and evil. So I mean, let's kind of demystify that now, break that down, and go into it a little bit more in terms of what is Obeah. Is it inherently evil and wicked and bad? Is its reputation justifiable, or has it been misrepresented?
I mean, the thing is, you got to start when we're thinking about African derived practices and traditions and so on. We who are coming into this understanding, or we who are curious, probably need to start with a more positive aspect and then work backwards.
Right.
What we tend to do is we have been given, and we start with the negative. So I have people who I know are really quite interested and go to celebrate African spirituality through the forms of like Ifa or Orisha, but then have a complete crazy imbalance when it comes to Haitian Vodou.
Yes.
And I find that really strange. So we our best bit would be to start with the positive and then try and work your way back.
Okay.
Because if you can do that for other things, if you can believe that Sometimes, you know, they might show an invention from some random invention. It's like, oh, an African did that, you know, like, okay, you know, but then the things that are cultural and quite deep and what have you, we just push that away, as far away as possible from us. And there's ample reasons for that. So the Obeah academics, scholars, practitioners, and you name it, they disagree on what Obeah is ultimately. Right. And actually, probably they more disagree with where the word and the term comes from.
Yes.
Because we know it's come down from. We know that it's, like you said, it's an overarching expression that you find throughout. You find this throughout the region. And so we need to just understand what it is. Obeah is anything that's related to the manipulation of natural phenomena, as well as an interpretation of cosmic realities. Obeah is something that can manifest through that manipulation of natural or cosmic phenomena, good outcomes or bad outcomes. Right. Now that bad outcome is determined by what the individual believes is their right to reverse some kind of negative that's been done to them, some kind of sanction that's been breached in some way or other. Or at the same time, bad could be they want to claim something, they want to have something, so they go to someone who is skilled in the use and the understanding of how to manipulate the objects that Africans have forever believed, you know, like the tree has a force and a power. Plants have trees and a force and a power. Rocks have, you know, rivers have them. You know, things that are living, you know, eggs have power. Your hair has power. Your skin. All of these things are believed to be possessed of, I suppose, what the Yoruba or the Ifa, in Ifa they'd call the ash, the power. And it's how you manipulate that to bring about what you want. We have that kind of system, if you like, that magic system in things like that we've seen all the time, like Harry Potter's and the whatever. You know, you've been seeing those workings all the time. So Obeah has become to be understood as something that's to do with witchcraft. That's to do with that's to do with witchcraft and doing wickedness, because it can connect in some of the literature to the workings of the devil and this kind of thing. But some of these labelings of it comes down from European, especially British, ways of later interpreting their own experiences of witchcraft and that kind of thing. So they're going through how they're understanding it, and then they translate that understanding to what they see Africans doing. So so an Obeah man or an Obeah woman is somebody who is skilled in the use of herbs, knows how to divine or read. In Guyana, we call them readers, or can actually, if you give you your desires, you know, if you want to go to them, you can say, okay, I want to get to America, say, which is what some people might do. You want to travel. So that Obeah person you would go to, and you know, they could do some kind of ritual utilizing some of the phenomena, and it's based on the effectiveness of that ritual that they do, which is how you become, how you gain your reputation as an Obeah man or woman. Now, whilst, just to continue a minute, whilst in some, and actually, yes, in reality, as my book, because I was skimming over my book today, depicts a lot of the negative impressions that we have of Obeah, which links it to witchcraft, which links it to evil, which links it to all this kind of negativity, comes from the fact that it was practitioners who were regarded as Obeah men, as I've just mentioned with the Taki situation, who basically attacked the because Bookman of the Haitian Revolution you just meant, that's what he would be. He would be an Obeah man.
Yes.
Cecile Fatima is a voodooist, but it's a voodoo priestess. But that's Obeah. They're using that power to affect an outcome. And actually, for say the Surinamese who practice Winti, Obeah, they don't have this negative idea about Obeah as in other places they do. So they believe Obeah is a power, and most of which is unused or underused.
Right.
We possess. Everybody possesses this power to be able to say or do certain actions, but it's heightened in certain people who are called to that by some kind of dream or some kind of recognition or some way that you go, okay, yeah, that's an Obeah. So if for example in Suriname, trance takes place, through a ritual process, trance takes place, they would be able to say, oh, that's an Obeah, that's their Obeah, that's that power that's coming through that they can see, and so on.
Right.
So it's complex, but at the same time, it's not complex if we understand that it's to do with belief, it's to do with actual the effectiveness of, say, I want to get my degree, I want to pass my degree.
Right.
And, what I'm going to do, I'm going to light this candle for 6 days.
Yes.
I'm going to fast. I'm going to do all these things to affect an outcome.
Right.
And there are varying degrees of what that outcome might look like.
Right. Okay. Understood. All right. You touched on a few things there. What I want to focus on though here is this idea of nature. Yeah. And partly because I've had some conversations where I've been, explaining the importance of the laws of nature and understandings of nature in terms of how African spiritual systems develop. Yeah. It's very much based upon the character of the natural environment around us. Yeah. And so that this, well, I mean, in the conversations that I was in, this kind of got into questions of authority and verification. Yeah. Why in your humble estimation do African spiritual systems focus so much on nature as opposed to, I asked a question in the group the other day, and you answered the question in terms of whether African spirituality needs a holy book, and the idea that, well, the holy book is the laws, is nature, is the river, the trees, is them kind of things there. What is that about, and why is nature so important to how the spiritual system develops? Because to me, it's about that total connection and total the fact that the conceptualization of ourselves as part of the natural world. For Africans, there's no, I am part of nature. I am nature. There's no separation. I honor the tree is is an ancestor. The tree is divest of particular power and energies that I can go to. The rivers are full of energies that I can go to and I can bear. And obviously it's not really just Africans as well that feel this. It's just, when the Europeans saw that we were going there and we were putting accoutrements to our trees, they kind of called it all sorts of things. But we didn't see a separation between ourselves and the natural world. And that has never changed. Everything for us was to do with our connection with nature. Everything was to do with about reading the signs, the wonders of nature, and celebrating the gifts that nature gives to us. That's why we have things like yam festivals and
festivals for the fact that nature has produced, that the land has given us this tree has given us this particular vital energy. Without the rivers, without the waters and so on, where would we be? What would we have? And it will just go back to primordial existence. You know, everything emanated from that. And we have never lost sight of this. In fact, one of my things when we're talking about reparations, I think when we think of the denigrations and the demonization of African spirituality and African traditional systems, for me, that's the most profound disconnect that the introduction of some of the other systems has had on us, so that it translates to the way we when we are having some troubles. I remember Dalian was on a panel, I don't know if it was last year, it might have been last year, and they were talking about spirituality and mental well-being and mental health or something. And he was the only voice, if you like, on African spirituality, where you had others who were, you know, doing the psychologists and so on. And they were all Christians. So you had three of them, Dalian, three are practicing Christians. And, you know, when someone asked about, so when you're not feeling right, when you're having that kind of mental imbalance, what do you do then? Because for the Christian, they would have their Bible and they would have their church and they would have their fellowship in and so on. What do you do as an African spiritualist? Because it seemed like there's no thing that you can hold on to that you can say, okay, I'm holding this. Like you were saying about the book, there's no book. What am I going to do? We know there are books and things, you know. But anyway, so Dalian said about lighting a candle. You can light a candle, you can put some glass of water, you can communicate with your ancestors, you can do this and so on, which was like kind of poo-pooed. And I said, well, you could also go and walk in nature. You can walk by the trees, you can go by the river, you can go and do this. And I overheard someone say, but the Bible is not there. And so for me, that disconnect with the importance of going out and getting some fresh air, going and communing in nature, looking to the, you know, observing the sequences of the moon and all these things which we have done and we continue to do to mark time, to kind of to give thanks and reverence for the produce that we are being given, the fact that the sun is sustaining us, without which we wouldn't really be, the levity that we have and the energies of waters and all these kinds of things. That loss to me is quite grievous when we're talking about ravages of imperialism, Euro-imperialism.
Right. You know, I remember we had a conversation. I was on a panel, I can't remember what chat we was on. I remember my brother M.A. was on the chat as well. But I can't remember what the conversation was about. But a similar kind of question came up. And I made this contribution about the fact that one of the major things in terms of African spirituality, in fact, it might be my own chat actually. One of the major things in terms of African spirituality is that a lot of our relationship with nature and the world and the planet Earth would be different if it was a more prominent practice on the Earth, because of that reverence for nature. Like the levels of pollution and abuse of our natural environment just wouldn't exist. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, how we preserve, you know what I'm saying, because we see divinity in the natural environment, how we treat it is just different from that particular worldview. Kings and Queens, if you've just joined us, we're locked on right now. We're having a conversation with Sister Yaa Asantewaa, who is a very powerful sister in our community. You know, we gave her a brief introduction at the beginning of the show, so you can watch it back to get that full thing. But she's an expert, I would regard her to be, in African spiritual systems in the Caribbean and worldwide, Kings and Queens. And so we're just having a conversation with her about her research and her experiences with African spiritual systems, particularly as it relates to the Caribbean. I do want to say and formally announce two things. One is that I'm going to be sharing the link for anyone who wants to come live with us in about 10-15 minutes. In about 10-15 minutes. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is that when you join the conversation, join it with your mic muted and do wait to be called upon to speak. You can ask questions, you can make comments. Either one is fine. The only rule is that we ask you to be respectful, and that is the only rule, kings and queens. All right, and as many people as I can get on, I will get on. So if there are many people that want to come through, do bear in mind that I may ask you to leave the call if it gets full to let somebody else in. And also, I want to let you know, Sister Yaa Asantewaa mentioned voodoo earlier, and I can confirm that, well, the next scheduled chat I'm going to be having, because I may have one before then, but the next scheduled chat I'm going to be having will be with a sister by the name of Mambo Ama Mazama, who is actually a voodoo priestess. She was initiated in Haiti, and she's also traveled to Benin as well a few times to get the roots of the thing. The actual page for this stream is going to be is up already, and we're having that chat on Wednesday the 20th of February. Yeah, I've just shared the link to the page, the stream page in the chat now. So if you want to set a reminder from now, yeah, set a reminder from now, so you don't forget that show, you don't miss that show, and you can do that right now. So I've just shared that link in the chat. We're going to be talking about overstanding voodoo. Many misconceptions about voodoo. Once again, this is not an exercise in conversion. We're not debating anybody right about now. We are not talking about the inadequacies or virtues of anybody else's spiritual practice or religion. We're just teaching about African spirituality. And so one of the major ones is the system of voodoo, and it is probably the most demonized African spiritual practice on the planet Earth. And so we're going to be going into that with our sister, who is a voodoo priestess. So she is, an expert in the thing, and she's going to be sharing her understanding and expertise on voodoo on the 20th of February, kings and queens. All right, so do stay tuned for that. And once again, we'll be opening up the lines in about 10-15 minutes. Sister Yaa Asantewaa, I want to ask you now about Komfa, and just share with the viewers what is Komfa, and what are some of your experiences with. Oh no, in fact, sorry, I've missed something there. Before I get into Komfa, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, in the conversation with Dalian, I started out by looking at the concept of a supreme being, supreme deity, which many people would refer to as God. Yeah. What is the concept, or is there a concept of a supreme deity, a supreme being, in these systems that you've come across in the Caribbean, these African spiritual systems that you come across in the Caribbean? And what is the concept of the supreme being from your understanding?
Yeah, all of them have a supreme being. So they have a supreme being, and under the supreme being, which is omniscient and omnipotent and all the things that we associate with God, the Godhead, or what's called God. And that supreme being is given, is given service, or rather gods, if you like, in some of the practices underneath that supreme being, who do the work, so you can go more directly to those on this other. If you imagine it as a tier or a pyramid or a hierarchical structure, you have the supreme being, and then under that there are these different layers of forces, if you like. In Komfa, it would be like, there would be God, and then you have celestials who would be like the angels and the archangels and stuff like that. Because in Komfa, which we'll come to, they don't have orishas and so on.
Right.
Yeah. So in other of the system, they have their supreme being, and then under them they have a range of spirits, ancestors, deities. And some of those spirits can be, most of them are good. Some of them are like spirits that are kind of trapped after they've passed on, and then they become malevolent over time.
Right.
Which are, they kind of call them earthbound, if you like, and you can use them for particular things, which are not necessarily good, but it appears good to the person that's using it and wants, for example, riches, which can be fleeting or can be real. But yes, they all have supreme being, which is God. It's just how the different ways they interpret what that supreme being is. Yeah. And in the same way as the other gods that we become aware of are remote, because they'll have tales where that supreme being is just up there wherever or around, and actually within as well. But the lesser, the ones under that are the ones you access to get to the supreme being. But I just need to clarify the fact that for most of them, especially when they are more intimately linked to some of the traditions like Ifa and so on, they recognize the oneness with the practitioner or the individual with that supreme being.
Right.
So it's not like it's something that is, the removal means that accessing that divinity that is within.
Yes.
You utilize the other energies along this other kind of level. You access that to get to your higher self, if you like, which is God, which is ultimately the supreme being. So it's really about your relationship with how you access your divinity, which is identified as that force.
So, to clarify what you're saying, and I'm just mindful of by the way, let me just big up some people in the chat. Big up B2, my brother, bless up. Big up Nino Brown, you don't know, greetings, welcome. Big up 5156, I mean. Greetings and welcome once again. My brother Kemo Ben Israel, blessings and greetings and welcome. Jennifer James, greetings. She says, it's funny, a friend asked the same thing, is there a Bible? I said no. She said she's not interested then.
Okay.
No Bible, no interest. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's just part of the part. You know what I mean? That's part of the journey. Yeah, I'm gonna come. In fact, on that note, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, I'm gonna come back to your friend who actually came to the Oshun ceremony once, and get a reflection from you on that. You know what I mean? Because she was a Christian, innit? Who came to the Oshun ceremony. You know what I mean, and things there. So people that are not everybody who's in a Abrahamic religion, so to speak, is you know, kind of dismissive and scared or apprehensive to explore these things. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely not.
It's good to know that as well. You know what I mean? It is good to know that. So yeah, all right. So let's so just making that clear. But I want to clarify what you just said, yeah, because a lot, again, dealing with the perceptions like what the ones that we just read. It kind of gives the impression people often think, yeah, that, you know, there is this one God and you want to connect to the one God, and somehow they seem to disqualify the fact that there's in their spiritual system there are angels who communicate with the living on behalf of them, kind of things there. But yeah, which is interesting. At the same time, they would say, well, we don't need to deal with the quote unquote lesser gods, and even that terminology is probably a consequence of language. But what you're saying, the recognition is that the spirit of the supreme being is actually within and throughout the universe, throughout nature. So it's not that in essence we're like the supreme being is, because the supreme being is omnipresent, we're constantly communicating with the supreme being through how we relate to ourselves, through how we communicate with ourselves, and through how we communicate with nature. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we in our systems, again, everything is interrelated. If we are created beings, we are created expressions of that supreme life-giving, ultimate life-giving force. So we don't see ourselves as distinct, particularly. It's just that we're having a peculiar, as Professor James Small likes to put it, we are having a peculiar experience, if you like, that we are the creative force having our particular peculiar experience. And we link back to that ultimate creative life-giving force. We're not so, and we do that through ritual, through the forces of nature, which in the Ifa system is the Orisha. So it's that, and even the Orisha, they're not like something necessarily you have to think of as separate from you. It's just symbolically we come to say, okay, this is ocean, and that energy manifests in this way. It's the river, and so on. We just gave it this kind of female version, you know, like how the river flows and stuff like that, and it's to do with the sensual and all this kind of stuff. But really, the ocean energy, the energy of love, the energy of sensuality, the energy of peace, the energy of beauty, and all of these, they're present within each of us.
Right.
And we just activate them. So the supreme being is also an aspect of us, is present within us. Our divinity is within us. And we have to do ritual, and we have to access that divine through these various energies and entities that are that runs throughout the universe, the cosmos, that's invested in nature and so on. So we would go to the plant. The plant is an aspect of the divine, an aspect of creation, an aspect of nature, through which we can go to and say, plant, heal me, you know, plant, feed me. I am one of you, you know. So everything is connected, everything is interrelated, and everything obviously stems from that ultimate force of creation, which we are part of, and we are expressions of, having our little peculiar experiences.
All right, beautiful. All right, we're going to open up the lines shortly, but before we do so, let's get into Komfa. You know what I'm saying? Let's get into the Komfa and what it is and your experiences with Komfa. Let's give our listeners a beautiful kind of, you know, explanation about that.
Guyanese Komfa is a practice that involves trance dancing through the beating of drums. So somebody who hears the beating of the drum goes into trance, or several people at the same time, and they catch Komfa. Komfa practitioner might be called to become a practitioner through visions, dreams, by actually attending one of these rituals and going into a trance state, and then deciding that they want to take up this faith. They are called Komfa practitioners, which is part of what's in Guyana is called spiritualism, or the spiritualist, or the faithist church. And and they are not like, it's not a church as in it's like an organized body, an organized religion necessarily, because you can have Komfa practitioners just by somebody who decides they want to hold a drum walk, if you like. They're going to knock the drum for their ancestors or for whatever. And
wait, a drum walk?
Yeah, you have these different ceremonies. So the Komfa, I mean, this is documented in my book as well. You go through the different ceremonies that you have.
Yes.
Called a drum walk. One might be called a table walk, in which you just lay a table, and the table could be, there's one that's called a Chinese work or Chinese walk. So they have these, I must go back, they have these, they acknowledge 7 ethnic spirits, which are believed or have contributed to the formation of Guyana. So those are, they have African spirits, which is called Congo or Cromanti. You have the Chinese, you have Chinese spirits. You have Amerindian spirits, which is the indigenous people spirits. You have East Indian spirits. You have the European or the English spirits, and that's like a long topic. You have Portuguese who are white, are subsumed within that English dominant spirit. And you have what they call the Juka, and the Juka are the Surinamese, who also, because Guyana was colonized by the Dutch, so you have some overlays there, and so on. And each of those ethnic spirits have particular functions that they do, just like with the Orisha, say. But you don't have, and I'm assuming a lot of people that are listening would know about Orisha.
Yes.
But and Komfa has their different realms, so they have like God, like you said, the supreme being, and then they will have the archangels, the angels from the Christian, because it was what they call syncretized with European English Anglicanism and so on.
So do they use the Bible then?
Yes, so some of the Komfa practitioners will use the Bible,
Okay.
And
Jennifer James, you can tell your sister that there's some Bible going on here now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
and actually, to be fair, most of the practices, because remember, all of them are coming out of some level of Christian whatever, and then you had to mix it. So to practice the indigenous or the indigenous African tradition, it wasn't really possible. So when they came over, or when they were dragged over, they kept as much as they could. They mingled some with the other Africans that they met there. So you have a commingling of enslaved Africans who saw that what they were doing were similar, and they recognized that. And then you had the indigenous to the New World territories that they call them. So in Guyana, you've got the Amerindians, and what are you guys doing? Okay, that looks a bit like what we're doing over here. So it kind of got this mingling. And then, of course, you have the Christian dominance that was imposed, but also as a way to keep it. The one thing I should say as well is that Komfa comes out of the worship of the Mami Wata. In Guyana, we call it Wata Mama or Wata Muma, but it stems back to the worship of Mami Wata in West Africa, and across Africa. Actually, you have Mami Wata traditions, and so Guyana Komfa camp comes out of that. But it was later that tradition was kind of forced underground when Christianity prevailed, and so the Water Mama bit is still done, but kind of like not so. It's not so much. They still go to the waters and do their rituals there. The Komfa practitioners who still continue recognize the links with Wata Mama, and in Guyana we call them. Whereas like you'll have mermaid, we have fair maid. And so on, who would be like the Yemaya and the Oshun and so on. But so it links to that. So now, like I said, Komfa is organized around these series of rituals and so on that they do, and it's quite. You have drummers who will play particular tunes. Interestingly, they have rhythms that will invoke the spirits of, say, ancestors, invoke spirits of East Indians, invoke spirits, a Chinese spirit, invoke Amerindian spirit, and so on. So it depends. Like if you can do a walk, which is a ritual, a ceremony, and
you have to clarify, these terminologies nowadays. When you use words like walk,
So a walk is a ritual, is a ceremony. Yes. So, and it's a dedicated one. So you might have one that's like a. So they would be doing the drumming, and it could be dedicated. That drum work, if you like, could be dedicated to. It could be you're doing that because it's your birthday or whatever, and you want to just celebrate the ancestors and so on. And at that, there'll be a host, there'll be guests, and then they will expect. There is no, by the way, none of these traditions is remiss of the phenomenon of trance. Every single one of them. Once that drum is there, trance takes place. So in Guyanese Komfa now, you will have trance. You will have trance dancing, and several people can go into trance at the same time. The person that's the host, or the people that are invested with the skill to understand what's happening, would recognize, say, they're dancing like a Chinese man, a Chinese person. So they recognize those. They have these stereotypical ways of understanding what's going on, or they might dance like an East Indian, or they might dance like what's considered a European, and in which case they would continue playing in that vein. To see that, that person, they have a Chinese spirit. That person, they have an English spirit, that, and so on. And so in Komfa, they don't have like the African gods per se. But and if they recognize that the person who's gone into trance is dancing in a particular way, they could identify that as a Congo spirit. Or and so on. But otherwise, there's no leftover African gods in that way. Although some of the songs that they sing do recognize, like Zambi.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which is
to Zambi.
Yeah.
So on.
Interesting.
So they kind of hidden it in particular ways, but it still comes through in some of the songs and the rhythms that they do.
Yeah, definite. Beautiful. All right. I don't. Did you want to say anything more on trance before we open it? Before I send out the link to open it?
Yeah, I think I kind of just touched it briefly because that's one of the things I do want to. I want to actually do something around it because we had the good fortune to meet with a Ghanaian priest a few months ago, and I had mentioned something about Guyanese Komfa, and I'd mentioned about trance, and I was saying that, yeah, you know, trance happens, and you know, it can happen here, and he was like just stunned that trance can take place here, and he's like, where does that happen? And I'm like, yeah, it happens, you know, I have experiences of that happening here. And so he's saying, no, you must do it. You must bring this on because this is the sort of thing we need to know. He said, because that is the untamed power of our captivity. Because they were able to do this and they were able to do that, but they could not take away that particular energy that comes through. There is just no way. So if, for example, you have ceremonies here where people are skilled in the beating of that drum and knows how to help the manifestation of those spirits, it will happen.
Yes.
But in this environment, trance, I find, is like is a heavy it's a heavy process to happen. Yeah, but once you're in the Caribbean, once you're, you know, to me, you just, the trance is a lot easier, and it's throughout. It really is an untamed aspect, and it's also not necessarily the case that trance has to be through the drum either. You can go into trance through different reasons and by different means. And sometimes what we have considered mental destabilization is actually trance, but you know, it's trance in a particular way that it would take a skilled practitioner to observe what's going on with that individual and so on. So the reason why I flag it up is for us to be able to try and understand when we see our people in our communities behaving in a particular way. And especially sometimes, I mean, we did a ritual a few years ago in just not far from here. And in this video, you can actually see there's like some trance is taking place in one corner, but at the corner in the camera, sort of slightly off camera, you can see another sister is in a state of trance. But because of there's a level of control with it, the rest of the people can't see that that's what's happening. But in Guyana, say, or in the Caribbean, that sister wouldn't be sitting there calmly being in trance, you know, and trying to control it. She would get up and she would dance and she would move, and then they would, you know, welcome her and so on. But I've observed it where it's like this stunted remote thing where you just keep it in. And how many of us are doing that? Just keeping in the ability to.
It's a good point. It's a good point, and I think yeah. All right, let me open up the lines now. So I'm gonna send the link out, kings and queens. I'm gonna put the link in the chat now for anybody who wants to join the conversation. Once again, the 2 rules are: please, when you come and join the conversation, join with your mic muted. Join with your mic muted, and do wait until I come to you before you speak. And also, we just ask you to be respectful. We know that, and I have to emphasize that because we're talking about African spirituality, and people have a tendency to disrespect the thing, unfortunately. And so, yeah, we don't mind whatever you come with. You can come with a different viewpoint. You cannot believe in anything that Sister Yaa Asantewaa is saying, and even challenge you, as long as you do so with respect, okay? And we welcome all of that. I want to send a special shout out to Sister Yaa from across the waters. We greetings to you, Sister. Ali Al Hassan, yeah, greetings and welcome. And Toriyama Konadu, I am glad that you are enjoying the discussion. Long Belly TV is in the house, and if you know anything about Long Belly TV, you know that that is Ancestral Voices. So Brother Dalian and Sister Verona sending love to you, my brother and my sister. You don't know. We'll have to just continue this work. All right, Kings and Queens. So the link is now in the chat for anybody who wants to join. Please join with your mic muted. Once again, please join with your mic muted. I will see you and I will come to you when it is appropriate. Okay, but feel free to join the chat now if you have any questions, any comments to make, any things to add, anything to challenge, any queries. You're still uncomfortable with this thing called Obeah. You know what I'm saying? You want to talk about, or your granny did tell you that somebody did put, you know, fling some iron upon somebody else. And you know what I mean, some bad, yeah, and you want to clarify the thing, feel free to do that, Kings and Queens. Or you want to just speak about how your grandma did secretly take you to an Obeah man when you did young, you know what I mean, and you want to talk on the show. Feel free to do that. They got Souls of Nams. Greetings, sister. Wagwan. Love. Yeah, feel free to join the chat now, sister. Whilst people are coming into the call, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, yeah. You talked about this thing called trance. Now, for many people, because of our upbringing and our perspective on these things, I know that there are some people listening that are going to be thinking, well, but you don't know what kind of spirit you're calling. Yeah, you know, you might be imbibing some demon spirit inside of yourself. Why would you want to do that? Yeah, just address that point for anybody who's, and I know there's somebody thinking that right about now that you're summoning demons when you talk about trance.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with you, like everybody. A lot of people, that's the go-to. Yeah. So the go-to is that, well, I don't know what's going to come. I don't know what's going to come on me, you know, and so on. Now, the practitioners of any of the expressions will have set the scene. They will have prepared, they will, for however long they're planning to do this ritual, they are going to do a ritual. Say, I'm going to just use, they're going to do one for ocean, let's say. Yeah, so they're going to call up on the entity, the energy of ocean. Or actually they could do one where it's for, it's an ancestral work. And so they're going to set the scene. They're going to make sacred the space that they're using by their rituals that they know how to do to make sure that they keep out any likely negative energies from coming in to that space. That's why one of the things that connects our expressions is to have a sacred space that we create.
Right.
We create the space, and this is the thing that connects to nature as well. The space is usually outside. Yeah, the space is usually in the ground outside, and that's cleaned. By cleaning, they mean they're like certainly in Komfa, they're appealing to the higher forces. They're appealing to the sacred. They're appealing to the properly divine, and to keep out those. They will use whatever they can to keep out the energies. Now, that said, during the ritual, once spirit manifest, as I've just said, because they're aware that they're doing a ancestral work, then if this is an ancestral work and it's say for a family, someone there will go into trance. It's likely to go into trance, and that is likely to be because, just like we do when we do libation, we've called on the names of those ancestors and so on. That ancestor is likely to come.
Yes.
Yeah, or one of them from that lineage is likely to come, and then you welcome the ancestor. You embrace the ancestor. If the proceedings hasn't been done thoroughly and properly, because you have spirits, it has to be said, that can still sneak their way in. Also, for example, you have an individual who comes to the ritual and they are, say, they are possessed by a negative entity. So they're walking with that entity around.
Right. Yes.
And they don't know that they're walking with that entity in them, which can be destabilizing them, and they don't know. They're thinking people are saying, oh, she mad, you know, that one day she's crazy or whatever. But they come to that ritual and they start to perform in a particular way when they're hearing the drum and so on, flinging up themselves in a particular, however way they're flinging it up. Now, with the skill of the practitioners and those organizing that ritual, you will go and communicate with the entity, because you're no longer communicating with the vessel. Say, like if it's you, I'm no longer talking to ShakaRa. I'm talking to the entity that is dancing or performing or behaving in a particular way, and I would question it and say, who are you? What are you? And so on, and that way, and you get them to talk themselves out. So, and I cover this. I do this in my novel called Something Buried in the Yard, actually, because I wanted people to see how this can actually work. Now I've seen this, and I think it happens. This is why the Surinamese case is so fantastic, and I wish I'd had more time to even do that justice. But in Suriname, they actually do rituals to find out where or who has a negative energy or a negative entity possessing them. So right. So they will play the drums or whatever. That way they know, okay, when you start behaving this particular way, we know that you're possessed. And so we need to do an exorcism to rid it of. We find out who this is and how it got there, and then we get rid of it. You need to go to an Obeah man, an Obeah woman, and they will deal with it, and so on. Now, if you so with trance, though, generally, it is an ecstatic and elevated way of a mediation between this realm and the another realm, say the ancestral realm. It's a mediation, communication through dance, where they might come to give you some message to say, you know, to the community or to the individual or to the family or whatever. And certainly, if you're doing one to honor an Orisha, when that dancing takes place, most of those people who are dancing have been mounted, as they would say in some of the expressions, by the force, if you like, the force of love, the force of beauty, the force of joy, that element that comes in as and expresses as ocean. Or comes in and expresses as nurturing, as the bigger mother, the mother that is Umaya, and so on. That's what they're coming through as. And they're embracing you because you've called them
to that.
So you needn't really fear that what's coming through is some random thing, because if some random thing did come through, there would be somebody who would say, "Tell us who you are." So and so and so and so, and they will answer. There's a person.
All right. Give thanks for that, sis. That's a beautiful explanation. Want to send a shout out to Arts Performed. Says it's fascinating to hear how many of us trance but keep it in. Even though I'm not of African heritage, I still recognize that the music takes me, but I keep it in. So cool to hear you. Thank you for joining our conversation. Brother Mario Goose, my brother, greetings. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Says, just caught the last 5 minutes of Sister Yaa. Give thanks for the discussion. We give thanks for that. Sister Hawaii says, big ups to you, ShakaRa and Dr. Michelle Yaa, for delivery this informative discussion to us. Chinedu Ashe, greetings and welcome. We're going to come back to that second question, brother Mario Goose. Jahazel, my brother, welcome and greetings. Thank you for joining us. Big Avelli, thank you for joining us. Jahazel says, when I first went to Pentecostal church, my friend spoke in tongues and it sounded just like Chinese. The pastor said it was demonic. You've given me some insight on what that might have been. So your friend was practicing Komfa, you get me, and channeling the Chinaman energy, you know what I mean? We love that. You love that, Jahaza. Welcome, my brother. Welcome. Right, we have Sister Naomi on the call. Sister Naomi. Nams Ebony. You there? Feel free to
Hello.
unmute. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Wagwan, my sister.
You're all right. What's going on?
You know what? I gotta say, it's the first time that I'm hearing your voice since you became a parent, and I've also become a parent. So we have to say congratulations, you know what I mean? And
Thank
send some
you
of
too.
that new parental energy, you know what I mean? Yeah, across the internet. So blessings, sister.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It's interesting because I was actually gonna ask a question in regards to that in itself. So,
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to kind of share like a brief experience and kind of ask a question as to how this could kind of come about. So, yeah, I've just become a mother. But prior to conception, I knew I was about to conceive. And I had a very intense process or experience to where I felt as if I had like a very vivid experience with almost like my guides and my ancestors, where they had chosen me specifically for that moment to become a mother. And I wanted to know if you kind of knew about any types of kind of processes of what kind of happens in the astral realms of like when someone becomes a mum, because it's almost like I've been carrying my child's frequency for like a year prior. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask about that if my question makes
Well,
sense.
you know when you bring people like Nams on the call, you know it can go some places, you know. There's some levels of questions right there, you know. There's some levels right there. Yeah, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, I know every youth having to answer this one, you know, still.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think you're your best guide on it, really, because in terms of African spirituality and spiritual practices, in some cases they believe that that whole process of the child coming in is them selecting their return and choosing the vessel that they want to come through. And so that might be the case where it's heightened in your situation. Obviously, for most people, they think that they're deciding to have a child and they're selecting the time of conception and so on. For some people, they will have the dream, or they will have the vision, or a grandparent might have the vision for you, or often you'll hear grandparents saying, "Oh yeah, a baby's coming," and so on. So remember, our time is different to a different the ancestral time as well. So things things might have already happened that we're just catching up on. So that child is already there, it's already out, and now you're finding out about that through the dream process. It's already set in motion, if you like. And so hence you would be having the dream that it's coming, and therefore that is preparation for it. But in the systems that I've looked at, necessarily, they don't really go too much into that specific. Sorry, it just feels like my door is opening. They don't necessarily go into that specific. My door is opening. Relationship with a mother necessarily. Oh, sorry, someone's just come through my door. But there can be a case where you would be called to practice, if you like, through dreams and visions. And it might be the case where you have a dream of an incoming child that is also supposed to be doing that work and that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know if I can really explain it any better than that. Just that for our spiritual systems, we know that we can connect to the different realms anyway, and how those realms intercede on our material reality. It could be through letting us know what's coming, even if it's a child, or even if it's death or illness or whatever. and therefore preparing us for that energy and for that that change of our lives.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question.
Beautiful. Give thanks for that, Sister Nams, for that question right there. The link is in the chat, and feel free to stay on the call for a bit, Sister Nams, if you would like to. It's no problem because there is space.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the link is in the chat, Kings and Queens. So feel free to click it if you want to join the conversation at all. If you want to ask a question, if you want to make a comment, you know what I'm saying? If you're coming from an African spiritual system and you want an education, if you're not coming from an African spiritual system, or even challenge from your own perspective, as long as we welcome it's all kings and queens. You know what I mean? You can feel free to do so and hit the link in the chat and join the conversation. While you're here as well, feel free to hit the subscribe button, you know what I'm saying, to check out my Black Daddy Diaries, you know what I'm saying, spoken word performances, presentations on African spirituality, Pan-Africanism, and all that kind of good stuff right there, you know what I'm saying. And a reminder that in 2 weeks time, on the 20th of the conversation with a Mambo, which is a voodoo priestess, and she will be breaking down the spiritual system and the science of voodoo, clearing up and clear that's where the misconception, the mischaracterizations, and get into the heart of the matter. And so for those who are interested, you just want to know more about voodoo, feel free to join me on the 20th of February. The link for that I've just also posted in the chat, so you can set a reminder for that right about now, you know what I'm saying. Like that page as well, you know what I'm saying. And whilst you're here, like this page also, you know what I mean, like this page also, right? Whilst we get anybody else who wants to kind of come into the conversation is deciding what they want to do, we have a question. And by the way, if you don't want to come on the chat but you want to ask me a question in the chat, feel free just put by words in the chat. It's the best way to do it though is to at ShakaRa speaks that I see. Okay. Otherwise, feel free to chat to each other as usually happens. The chat is a lot calmer this week, you know, than it was when Brother Dalian was on. Maybe it's something to do with the feminine energy. It kind of calms the vibes. You know what I'm saying? You know, we've got two sisters on the call right about now. So yeah, there's less hype in the chat. I love that still. You know what I mean? It's beautiful. Right. Brother Mario Goose says, Brother ShakaRa, can you count African spirituality as an avenue, maybe the only avenue, for true empowerment for us as African people? So Sister Yaa Asantewaa, Brother Mario Goose is asking for you to address African spirituality as an avenue, possibly the only avenue of us as a people.
The only avenue. I think
he's saying as an avenue or maybe the avenue.
An avenue for empowerment.
Yeah, for us as African people, so as a collective.
I think we be looking at it in terms of how it can empower us in different ways. Because I think I spoke with Brother Mario. Hello there, Brother Mario, earlier, and it was just out of that sense of frustration that about this deportation of the Jamaican to back to Jamaica, the deportation of citizens from here back to Jamaica, and the sense that we can do so much, we can protest, we can do this, we can do that, and how does it work? How do we, what changes do we really make? And obviously Mario is got his Haitian hat on when he's asking this.
Yes, he is. He does.
Because he's speaking from the empowerment that the Haitian revolution was able to manifest through the use of African spiritual systems. I do think that we are in need of, certainly as Pan-Africanists, as people who are trying to shift things, in need of trying to understand how we can make better use of those systems that we did in the past to at least attempt to free ourselves, to liberate ourselves. Because without fail, I mean, we have the Haiti case as as a very successful and proud example. But we mustn't forget that there were other examples too.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, the Taki situation, also the Berbice rebellion in Guyana was led by people that were believed to have, that people were believed to be practicing in spirituality from their African perspective. So in terms of us finding ways, strategies of survival and empowerment and ways that we can overcome different forces of oppression, I certainly think African spirituality needs to be something that's high up on the Pan-Africanist agenda, which it hasn't been, and it's not. And it certainly needs to be something that we should be trying to organize around. I know that we're going to have differences, we're going to have certain issues, but we need to use those examples that we've had. Just like I think Brother Dalian makes the point very well when he says that actually, well, you know, when you're thinking of the Haitian Revolution, it was a Pan-African movement in that they were coming, and all of those expressions all of them are coming from Africans coming together from different parts, being forced into whether they understood each other or not. They understood the territories. They understood they had a common enemy and what that common enemy looked like. And therefore, we're going to use this system to defeat that enemy. Now, if we were all invested with that particular sense of the practices and the sense of the power that it has, then certainly we can overcome a lot of the oppression that we face, I feel.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. And you know what? We've got a few suggestions in the chat. So before we leave, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, Nams suggested that we maybe can give some examples and suggestions on daily rituals that people can perform, and their purposes for cleansing or. And I'm gonna suggest, because I'm not. If my ancestral voices family is still listening, you are invited to join the call. If you so wish. This is not a request. It's not a demand. There's no coercion involved. But feel free to, if you feel like you have something to offer. My good brother Isa, affectionately known as Sunni Isa. Oh, by the way, sorry, but before I do that, I'm going to say that Sister Nams also saying in the chat, I think there has to be balance. It can't only be spirituality. This is an illusion. The Haitian Revolution wasn't only just spirituality. They had a whole structure. And I think that's an important point in the sense of we don't want to give the impression that the Haitian Revolution was won purely on the basis of ritual.
No. And that's certainly not. It's just to utilize, to make sure that we recognize that it's got to be up there somewhere. And at the moment, it's nowhere. Yes.
You know, I can speak to that because I'm a born and raised member of a Pan-African organization with an African spiritual foundation, and in reality, the organization was actually established because of that fact that there were so many Pan-African organizations that were talking about spirituality and culture, but weren't institutionalizing it, weren't practicing it in any serious kind of way. You see what I'm saying? And so the founding fathers of my organization, my father being one of them, kind of felt like some expression needed to come about that put spirituality central and forefront in the thing, you know what I'm saying? And so I kind of just give thanks for that upbringing right there, you know what I mean? I kind of just give thanks for that upbringing right there. So I'm gonna come to my brother Sunni Isa, very controversial question. I'm being facetious. It's not that controversial. He's asking Sister Yaa Asantewaa, are Africans who have adopted other spiritual systems seen as traitors or people who have turned their backs on their ancestors? To clarify, my good brother is a brother that I have a lot of love and respect for. My good brother is a Muslim, but from Ghana, and so I've had a number of conversations with him. A few conversations with him about African spirituality and you know how it's viewed by Abrahamic religion and the kind of things there, and he's come back to me with some observations of his own as well, and this is one of them, in the sense of the fact that, you know, generally speaking, our brothers and sisters who deal with the Abrahamic religions consider to be turning their backs on their ancestors or, you know, neglecting their own heritage for the sake of somebody else's heritage.
Is the brother Is it meaning like Africans generally, or is he talking about Africans in the diaspora, continental Africans? What is it? Is it just generally? Okay.
Yeah, you can clarify that, Isa, but I think he means generally. But he's from the continent himself. He's from Ghana.
Okay, because for me, I think we need to deal with this situation very delicately, because everybody is on their particular journey, and you know, like we've observed, or we've been speaking about the fact that there is the thing is with the African spiritual systems is there is no organized central body of a doctrine per se, and so that need for it that came out of our experiences of enslavement and colonialism, however way that came about, in terms of the imposition of a particular way of worshiping and honoring the divine, if you like, or being religious, we didn't necessarily have. So it's not that I would say that our people have turned their backs. They don't know what they've turned their backs on, if you know, for the most part. So it's like, what have you turned your backs on? So you could talk all day long to some people about ancestors, but they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean. So we can't really, I wouldn't really be trying to call these people, our people, traitors in that regard. I think there's a timeliness right now for us to recognize that we have been forced to systematically look at other forms of engaging with divinity, engaging with ways of life, and that's not through our own necessarily our own collective fault. But now that we have wider ways of accessing information and so on, people are becoming more and more aware and ready and open, if you like, to understanding and trying to reconnect with some of those systems, I think.
Yes, I hope that kind of addresses that point, you know what I mean? Yeah, Ancestral Voices in the house. I'm not sure if you heard my invitation, so just going to reiterate it, but not necessarily a call or a request. But Ancestral Voices, feel free to join the call if you wish. We're going to be giving some suggestions for daily rituals at some point before the show, before Sister Asantewaa leaves us. So yeah, you can feel free to contribute to that if you so wish, but don't feel coerced in any way. All right, so yeah, I hope that answers the question, Brother Isa. Do feel free to come back if you want to go more in depth. Right, we've got a question in the chat from M.A. Brown. I'm going to post the link to join the call one more time for anybody who does want to join the call. You know what happens here, Sister Yaa Asantewaa? Like sometimes, yeah, and I found this doing radio shows all over the place. There are shows where you get bare callers, like certain times, yeah. And then there are shows, yeah, that you hardly get any callers, but then you get bare messages after the show saying, yo, fantastic show, you know. You know what I'm saying? It's one of them things. So there are a lot of times when people are so engrossed in the information and listening to the speaker and the guest and whatever, they're just content to listen. And you know what I mean? And I've learned to gauge which is which, you know what I mean? And this is why them shows where I believe that people are really just engrossed in the energy that you're bringing over the World Wide Web. So we give thanks for that. Right, posting the link to join the conversation though for those who would like to, one more time. So that link is there right about now. So feel free where you see the ShakaRa Speaks post to check out where it says Google Hangouts or hangouts.google, and you can join the conversation. We have a question from M.A. Brown in the chat who says, are African spiritual systems typically malleable or subject to adaptation or fixed? Does the absence of documented teachings leave those systems more or less dynamic? Brilliant question. Brilliant question. God, yeah, so it's Sister Yaa Asantewaa. And you know what? I might add on to what you say after you answer the question as well. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I find with these discussions, I kind of think when you're getting questions, you know, because you know you're billed as this expert and all this, and you sort of think, okay. But I was hoping also that people would share things, because I know that all of us have our different portions of understanding. And sometimes that question really, I know, is like, you know, I know the answer to this really, but I'm just seeing what she's going to say.
Yes,
So
yes.
from time to time, it would be good for us to actually share and exchange our ideas about things. So yeah, definitely welcome. Malleable, the beauty certainly of African spiritual systems is their ability to adapt, and which is why we were able to keep them when we were forcibly removed from the continent. Wherever there was a river, we understood the river. We understood what that meant. Wherever there was stones, wherever there was, the moon is going to be there. And so we are, those are the fixed elements. So, you know, the natural phenomena, some of the cosmic phenomena, those are going to be fixed, and we're going to adapt them to our particular place. I mean, like here, if we want to go and do a ritual, we have to really consider when we're going to do that in terms of the time of year. Are we really going to go and do necessarily an ocean ritual when it's like freezing cold?
Like now.
Yeah, in the way we did it in August, say. So definitely what the brother is speaking of, the adaptability of it is there, and but bear in mind that there are some texts that we can still go to. I think you mentioned one about in fact you showed it about the Odu, and so on, but a lot of them you have to go through certain processes of initiation to have access to them. But actually these days there are different books and so on that you can refer to understand some of it.
Yes.
But I love the fact that certainly in the Komfa practice, there is scope for this dynamic where it's adaptable, which was why I'd mentioned that, you know, we have these different ethnic groups, because we wanted it was now specific to where it was, but we hadn't forgotten some of the elements that we brought with us. So we haven't forgotten about our herbal lore. We haven't forgotten about divination, not really. It's just that we don't tend to call it divining and divination, but but you still read, which is the same thing. You would read someone to know what their fortune is and so on. So the adaptiveness is one of the brilliant things about it, but at the same time, certain things to do with the natural and the cosmic phenomena are of course going to be fixed. What's the moon doing? You know, how are we utilizing the function of the moon, or the fact of the moon, or the sun's force, or how we seeing the waters? How do we look at Yemaya on the continent to how we looked at Yemaya? Because Yemaya, for example, the mother of the oceans, when we're coming over in the ships, we recognize that water and we're like, hey, this is our mother Yemaya, and we don't want to go to that dark place that they're taking us, jump overboard, welcome back, we're rejoining Yemaya and so on, and then we come. So there's fixed and there's adaptability as well. That is a dynamic presence of these expressions.
Beautiful, beautiful. For those who are friends with me on Facebook, you would have heard me post this in the week, and it's a quote from a book called The History of Religions in the Caribbean by a brother called Dale Bisnoth, and he's actually from Guyana. There's a little bit of a Guyanese vibration going on the show today, you know what I mean? These Guyanese authors have kind of come and taken over the show, you know what I mean? We love that. I'm going to post a link to the book as well, and where it can be found in the chat as well, but I'm going to quote from it now in answer to Brother M.A.'s question. I think he did see this post, but it says, a second change that took place in the Caribbean. So he's actually just explaining the kind of transitions and evolutions of African spiritual traditions and retentions and how they evolved in the Caribbean, And so he's outlined one change, he's outlining a second. He said a second change that took place in the Caribbean was that the divinities of different tribes became grouped together as slaves, I prefer the term enslaved Africans, of different tribal backgrounds were made to live and work together on the same plantation. The merging of the quote-unquote gods, so to speak, was facilitated by the fact that while many of the tribal divinities differed in names, they shared almost identical attributes and functions. Thus, the Ewe Sevioso, was for all practical purposes identical with the Shango of the Yorubas. Generally, the name of the god of the dominant tribal group survived. Thus, in northern Haiti, the Ibo, Congo, and Arada names for many West African divinities gave way to the Yoruba names. Yeah, and so basically, what you're seeing is like we often, when we talk about syncretization, it's often in relation to the European and the African, but there's also syncretization between the different African systems, and they merged. And so where there might be a dominant language expression, you know, they because there was so much relationship, yeah, between the spiritual outlook. Yeah, they were easily able to merge their traditions. And I also remember Dalian in his research talking about how different Orisha developed that was specific to the Caribbean because of the experiences of the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? So there's a water Orisha that is specific to, I think, say Brazil or something like that. And that's because, you know, of the nature of the environment in Brazil. And so the people in reacting or understanding the nature of that environment develop a spiritual principle or come to the understanding of a spiritual principle in that environment and give expression to it. So yeah, the dynamism is definitely there. And I think that Sister Yaa Asantewaa also gives a good example in terms of politically speaking, what Komfa represents here in terms of a tradition that is just not imperialistic in any way. You see what I'm saying? Like, in the sense that you've got these different groups of people, and so the spiritual system evolves to give consideration to the ancestry of those different people. Like, all of them are respected, as opposed to, no, this is the only way, and you must only you know, give homage to this specific set of ancestors. And them kind of things there. There's a difference politically speaking, or should I say in the political implications of those two things in terms of dynamism and how things evolve. And so, yeah, it's powerful. It's very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. There are a couple more questions in the chat. And Sister Yaa Asantewaa, we've got you for another 10 minutes at your discretion. So feel free to leave us after that. Yes, Arts Perform says Zumbi of the Colombos does Palmares in Brazil resistance to European slavery inspired me to learn more about systems of resistance. In part, inspired me to learn about my Indian Guyanese heritage. Give thanks for that contribution. So yeah, I would suggest getting Sister Yaa Asantewaa's book if you don't already have it, which is entitled Komfa, A Ritual of Trance. And the link to the Way Wive Wordz website is in the description for this video. So feel free to check that out and get the book. Brother M.A. Brown is affirming the fact that people are intently listening to the show. Sister or Brother Chinedu says every other culture accepts and practices their specific ancestral worship. However, the African culture worship has been beaten out of our psyche. You know what I mean? Which is, you know, very true. You know what I'm saying? Very true in many respects. Wherever there was nature, Kaz Rudy says, yes, indeed. M.A. Brown says, wow, about the middle passage. Brother Mario Goose says, the truest expression of our lives for ancestors, for spirits, for the creative force is the way we live, the levels of responsibility we take on this plane. One love, give humble thanks. He also said, give thanks to you both for treating the question. May I contribute that it may be useful to remember that to us Africans, spirituality is never only about ritual, but about way of life. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful contribution right there. All right, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, to wrap up your contribution to this particular show, let's get to that point in terms of sharing with the listeners, yeah, some daily rituals that they can do and perform, and their significance, and what the outcomes are intended to be.
Okay, yeah. That kind of question presupposes that I have a daily ritual that I do, and I wouldn't want the listeners to run away with this idea. There are certain things, yes, that you do, but whether it's like on that level of consistency is otherwise. I think if I was an initiate priestess, I'd be saying something else. But yeah, in terms of what you can do, and it's up to them when or how they do that, is one of the things is certainly as simple really as lighting a candle and being still for a little while. They can do, I don't know if they do or know about libation, but they can do libation to their ancestor. It's yeah, so I tend to do meditation, which is quite stilling, just for a few. You don't have to do it for long, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however way you want to just still yourself. I should mention, I suppose, that I do a workshop about creating an altar for a basic altar for ancestors.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I do are around ancestor work and connecting and communing with the ancestors. So that can be that's how you, for example, you would do the libation. But bear in mind, as I said, the importance of nature in a lot of what we do. I happen to live not far from a river, which I don't do it daily, but certainly when I'm given to that impulse and that need, I would go and I would walk along that river, and I would get to a particular spot and I would take an offering and so on, and I would do a ritual, on my own. We've done it, as you know, in groups, but I would do that on my own. Just for me, simple, keep things simple and very much connected with nature as much as you can. I'm looking right now at a whole heap of plants that have sprung up in my house in the last few months and years. I don't even know how it's happened, because I used to think I didn't have green fingers. But the beauty of that, it means that I'm constantly trying to keep them going and water them and connect with them and speak with them and this kind of thing. So it's just trying to understand, for me, that our practices aren't really so prescriptive. So sometimes when people ask, what can I do? It's because of that expectation that, there is something that I need to do prescriptively. And I like the fact that the beauty is that, well, what do you want to do? How do you want to connect to your higher self? How do you want to connect to your divine? And for what? For now, I have altars around the house. I'll have one for the ancestors, and I'll have one for ocean, say, and so on. So depending on what need I have, I would go to the altar, light a candle. I can, say I give ocean some honey, say, because honey is representative of the sweetness and the smoothness that I want my life, or that moment in my life, to be. Or there's rituals around water. So, for example, one thing that you can do, and this was clearly brought out in Ancestral Voices documentary, and if you haven't got that, really and truly, you need to just get it. Like, really.
I've just put it in the chat for anybody who wants to get it. The links to Ancestral Voices DVD and book is in the chat for anybody who wants to get it. And they actually have a whole section on rituals for daily living. So
exactly. And one of the things I wanted to say, that from there, there's a bit where it talks about, just drinking water, and before you drink the water, you can, give thanks for the water. because water is so important, obviously, to our lives and to our to sustaining us, to cleansing us, to purifying our bodies. So, for example, in the mornings, that's one of the things I guess I do consistently, is I will have water, and I'll usually try to have it out of a calabash. And if you don't have that, don't worry about it. But when you're drinking the water, rather than just consuming it very hurriedly, just acknowledge what that water is really doing and the power of the water, and it just makes you appreciate it in a different way. Or sometimes, otherwise, when you're even showering, simple as showering, sometimes, you know, you just need to be grateful of that water pouring on your body, imagining that you're under some waterfall or something like that. You know, those are the things that I do, but I don't want the listeners to run away with the idea that I'm this person that does this, that this is what I do when I get up each morning, as I do. But some of the things that I know that I do when I'm given to that impulse. But certainly the water is a daily thing that I do, and the plants, trying to connect with those energies of the plants, and trying to get out and get some fresh air when I can, and what have you. I'm a writer, so I can be kind of just stuck inside, just trying to write. Every now and again, I remind myself, no, you need to go out, you need to get some fresh air and this kind of things. Yes.
All right, Sister Yaa Asantewaa, it is approaching the hour of 10, so I'm gonna relieve you from duty.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't mean to be this sigh of relief like that, but I mean to say thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, sister, no problem, and thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and you know, I do love that. So there's various energies, kings and queens, you know what I'm saying, out here teaching on these things, and today was a different energy to what you've had before, and next couple of weeks you're going to get another energy again. I want to give you an opportunity, you know, sis, to say a last word. If there's anything that you just want to touch on before you go, that's on your mind or your spirit.
Oh wow. Anything that's on my mind or my spirit. I think when we started the call, or before we even started the call, we spoke about the positive vibration that we were trying to induce through this discussion. And I'm very much of the feeling that there is an elevation of our of consciousness, where we need to actually to tap into that vibration that's there. And even just the fact of this show, the fact of this moment, we need to tap into it, and we need to celebrate it more. And I'm glad that we didn't have cause to be defensive about what we're doing, because to be honest, you know, the experience that I mentioned right at the beginning took place in 1997, and it becomes quite tiring and quite tragic when you're spending a lot of time defending something. So if we can try to come together in more ways of understanding these traditions, I think that would do our ancestors really proud.
Yes, sister. Yes. That is a beautiful note to end on. I'm gonna continue just in case anybody's got anything they want to share after Sister Yaa Asantewaa leaves for another 15 minutes. Okay, well, we're gonna let go of Sister Yaa Asantewaa right now. So I'm just gonna thank her once again. Thank you very much, sis, for the continued work that we're doing. And yeah, you know, obviously when the Oshun ceremony comes around again, you know, we'll be there, and hopefully we'll be able to share it through this platform as well, and let our brothers and sisters know so they can come along and join us in the merriment. You know what I mean? We give thanks for your work and your energy. We give thanks.
Thank you, and likewise. Thank you so much, brother, and good evening to you all. Thank you.
Listen, feel free to hang up. All right, okay, that was Sister Yaa Asantewaa, kings and queens. You know, I mean, a powerful sister in our community. And yeah, this for those who are listening right now, just hit the 9 if you've enjoyed her contribution to the show. Just hit the 9 if you've enjoyed our Sister Yaa Asantewaa's contribution to the show. And I'm going to continue for another 15 minutes just to allow anybody, I know people were listening intently, anybody who wants to come on and share a reflection for anything that stood out to them, anything that they've learnt, anything that they just want to share based upon what they've heard on the show today. We're gonna just give you 15 minutes to do that. So I'm sharing the link right about now, once again, kings and queens, to come on if you want to do that. Yeah, if you want to do that. In the meantime, whilst you're coming on, I'm gonna share a couple things, yeah, in terms of rituals that people can do daily. I mean, again, sometimes it's difficult to do these things daily, but one of the things that I know that has helped myself doing the practice of Sima yoga, you know what I'm saying? And you know, one of the major things about that though is the breathing that is involved in it. And you know, one of the major things that people are doing in terms of treating mental health at the moment is things like oxygen rooms, yeah, and getting people to breathe deeply, fresh air and them kind of things. Yeah, we underestimate the impact that oxygen, or the lack thereof, has on our body. So when the sister is talking about going out in nature and just connecting, yeah, with nature, it's very important. You know what I'm saying? You know, obviously we know that we get oxygen from the trees, yeah. And so a lot of these things that we see, these rituals that we see in African spirituality, kind of matches up, yeah, and relates to a lot of different things that we're seeing in terms of psychology and treating mental, what they call mental health, or so mental illnesses, or achieving mental health. Yeah, a lot of these things relate, you know what I'm saying, in terms of being able to positively visualize, or they got this practice of mindful eating, you know, so you don't just eat, you eat mindfully. Yeah, eating becomes a kind of a meditative experience. Even drinking water becomes a meditative experience, you know what I'm saying? And so all of these things you will find ritualized through African spiritual systems. And so effectively what we're talking about, as Brother Mario was saying earlier, is a way of life, so that we don't wait until somebody diagnoses us as mentally ill before we take a look at our mental health. Like, taking care of mental health is a daily practice, it's a daily expression, it's daily addressed through the rituals there that we might engage in the day, or the things that we visualize, yeah, throughout the day. You know what I'm saying? So for example, in Ifa, one of the things that people do before they drink water is to raise it to their head, yeah. And the head, the reason for this is because the head is the seat of the Ori is consciousness, and it literally translates as head in English, okay. And so the Ori, being the consciousness, is said to be like the, you know, the inner God, the God within. It's known as Chi in the Igbo, and in fact it's also known as Chi in ancient Chinese spirituality. And so I'm going to share this prayer from a book, and once again, anybody who wants to share a conversation can feel free to do so via the link that is shared in the chat. If you want to share a reflection, feel free to do so, and we're going to go on until 1:15. After that, that's lock-off time in it, for anybody that wants to come on. So if you don't come before then, it's not going to happen. All right, but I'm going to share this prayer from a book entitled The Handbook of Yoruba Religious Concepts. Yeah, and this is obviously addressing the Ifa tradition, and this is a prayer to your Ori, or yeah, in relation to your Ori, which is your consciousness. Okay, so it's like you're speaking to yourself. Unfortunately, my Yoruba is not up to par, so I will not be saying it in the Yoruba. We'll just say it in the English. Okay, and it says, "My Ori, it is you. Ori, I hail you. You who always remembers your devotee." Yeah, and what that line symbolizes is the fact that you know, one always has to be devoted to their own consciousness. Yeah, the Ori is always remembers its devotee. Yeah, once you are devoted to your consciousness will be devoted to you. You who gives blessings to your devotee more quickly than other deities, because your inner God blesses you before all other spirits in the universe. Yeah, no deity blesses one without consent of their Ori. Once again, no deity blesses one without consent of their Ori. In order for us to receive the blessings and whatever goodness there is in the universe, we have to be in the state of consciousness to make the most of it. Yeah, that's what that symbolizes. No deity blesses one without consent of their Ori. So there is nothing from outside of you can bless you without what is within you being conducive to receive and make the most of those blessings. A person whose sacrifice is accepted by their own Ori should rejoice exceedingly. Ori, Do not shut the gate. It is to you that I am coming. Come and make my life prosperous. It is Ori that brings fortune. And so I read that because I've kind of read that to myself for the last week or so in the morning, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, just to keep my own consciousness in tune. So it can be simple things like that. This book also goes into ritual baths. There are different rituals baths that include different herbs for different purposes. And so I will leave ones to do their own research on that, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, depending on what you are trying to address, you will have different herbs, yeah, that affect the body differently, affect the consciousness differently, affect the mind differently, so to speak, that you would engage, bathe oneself within those herbs in order to address certain and certain things. But all of this is based upon the intent that you walk towards the ritual with. Sister Yaa says, yes, Brother ShakaRa, even the incorporation of drumming classes to release stress and cope with mental health. This is very true, you know what I'm saying? You know, this is the reason why so many of us live for the weekend, yeah? And I won't say I live for the weekend, but I do love to go out and dance and rev up the place, you know what I mean? Sister Yaa Asantewaa was talking about the drum walk, yeah? And I was laughing because we would know that a walk is a common terminology in many of our dances, especially if you listen to soca and calypso and you go carnival, you know what I mean? A good walk, you know, is yeah, you know what I mean? And then obviously walk has other connotations, kings and queens, you know what I mean? But we won't go into that today. Sister Nams is still on the call, so I'm just gonna give you the opportunity to share a reflection if you did want to. Feel free to do so now. You there, Sister Nams? You know you're not with the phone or whatever your device is. Giving you a sec. All right, I'm going to continue in the meantime. I'm going to wrap up the show now, kings and queens. You know what I'm saying? And just let you know, remind you that in 2 weeks' time, on the 20th of February, I have Sister Mambo Ama Mazama, who is a Mambo, yeah, she's that, which means she's an initiate in the Voodoo spiritual system. She's a voodoo priestess, and so we know that voodoo is the most demonized of all our African spiritual systems, and so we're going to be breaking that down in, you know, fine detail, kings and queens, on the 20th of February. Yeah, so do come true. The links are in the description, and the you there, Nams?
Yeah, sorry, my tablet's all messed up.
I'll give you a chance to reflect in a sec, yeah? So, yeah, we're doing that on the 20th of February. The 20th of February. I am, though, and I had this thought before, but I'm going to probably bring it forward now. I had the idea of bringing on another sister from Haiti who's also involved in voodoo by the name of Baina Bello. Baina Bello is a well-known activist from Haiti, but more specifically to look at the Haiti Revolution, yeah, and what that meant, what that symbolized, the role of voodoo in the Haiti Revolution, and how the spiritual system informed the economics, the politics, and the military war in Haiti from 1791 to 1804, you know what I'm saying? Well, even prior to 1791, if we include people like Macandal. So stay tuned for that. We're probably going to get Mama Baina Bello on to deal with the Haiti Revolution, which will be a different session. Mama Baina Bello has a fantastic energy about her, and she's an expert on the issue of the Haiti Revolution. So we're going to go into that most beautifully, kings and queens. So do stay tuned for that. Nams, I'm going to give you a chance to reflect on anything that stands out for you in the show before we close it off.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that stood out for me was when you was talking about yoga and breathing and how it connects to mental health. Sorry. Like, a lot of people don't understand that even the word spirit in itself, it translates to breath. So when we're talking about spirituality, if you're not focusing on breath or breathing or anything, then that's not really spirituality. And so a lot of us have a lot of misconceptions of what it is, but breathing in itself is so powerful. It's almost like we only think of breath when you're either having an asthmatic attack, when you're short of it, or when you've died, when you've expired. And it's like we need to bring ourselves back to these core things in itself, because mental health is a massive thing that is raging rampant in our community, and it's because we don't take the time to slow down. So this is what's bringing on a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, because we're so focused on what's just happened or what's about to happen that we're never really focusing on what's actually taking place right now. And right now you have breath, right now you're living, right now you're breathing. And in this very moment, you have the opportunity to change your very situation just by tapping into the moment. So I think that's what I wanted to kind of reflect on with, what you said about this, the whole breathing thing. It's powerful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Give thanks for that reflection, Sister Nams, you know what I mean? And blessings to your little one as well. How's he doing? How's he doing?
He's walking, he's ready to run.
Yeah,
he's ready to run. He's a warrior.
Ready to run yet, but he's doing a whole lot of other stuff, I tell you that.
Yeah. He's walking now, but he's literally he's doing really well. He surprises me every day.
Yeah, definitely. My one, what's surprising me at the moment, because we've had him on breast milk exclusively from when he was born, but because of the level of demand, we've kind of introduced into this as well. And the way this child is picking up a bottle like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Like, he has no bottle for like the maybe 7 months of his life, a bottle, and he picks up like he's been holding it in his hand.
Yeah. These children, but they are next levels. Their development is off the scale. My one was he was crawling up the bed from 2 weeks. I don't know where he's going.
Same. True. That same. You know what I mean?
Holding up their head from birth. Like, what's all that about?
It's a serious thing. Well, boy, in fact, I've got another new Black Daddy diary or a section of a new Black Daddy diary dropping tomorrow as well. So here's Kings and Queens. I'll be dropping new Black Daddy diaries on this channel. Just, document. I was kind of informally documenting my experience of being a new father in the first few weeks of my son's birth. And so, yeah, just sharing those thoughts. But I've just taken to reflecting on the reflections, doing videos on the things that I wrote in the first few days and weeks after my son was born. So those are on the channel, so feel free to subscribe and just check out the videos if you are interested in that kind of vibration. And give thanks for those who have been giving me important feedback on that as well. You know what I mean? It's amazing how it's like the environment that we're in is kind of deficit of Black men speaking about fatherhood. And I've realized that based upon the response that I've been getting to doing new Black Daddy diaries. It's actually quite amazing. Like, what should be something so normal, people seem to feel so starved of. And so I give thanks for being of service, and hope that, one day that we're going to do more sessions on that. I want to bring groups of fathers together, you know what I mean? And yeah, just to talk about fatherhood and share perspectives on Black fatherhood and them kind of things there. Finally, before we duck Kings and Queens, I just want to let everybody know that may not be aware about Got Kush TV. I am one of the managing directors of Got Kush TV. I'm also the presenter of our latest show, which is called The Insight. Yeah, just sharing perspectives on everyday issues, Kings and Queens. And so the last one, which was released on Monday, addresses the issue of R. Kelly and our social media usage surrounding R. Kelly. So I'm going to share the link for that. And yeah, feel free to go check out Got Kush TV and subscribe if you're not aware about Got Kush TV. Just check it out, innit? Support Black media. It's very important that we support Black media. And share perspectives. Feel free to leave a comment under the video if you have an opinion on what I share. Yeah, the link for that is now in the chat, Kings and Queens. And I just don't want to close by saying we do these things to educate and raise awareness about African spirituality, because we understand that these traditions and the philosophies behind it have been so very suppressed and in many cases demonized. And so we're just trying to shed some light on our the traditions of our ancestors, and very importantly, restore dignity. Yeah, restore dignity, even if just among African people, about the traditions of our ancestors. And so I want to thank everyone for joining us for this particular conversation. I want to thank in particular my sister Yaa Asantewaa for sharing her experience, sharing her studies, sharing her research, and thank all of you who have tuned in, commented, called in, silent listeners, all of you, for feasting from the wellspring of our ancestral wisdom, kings and queens. Tendam Wadi, be thankful unto the Most High, Mother, Father of creation. Kudzai Mudzimu Mukodo, we give praises unto our great ancestors. Ankh Ujasaneb, we bid you life, prosperity and health, as spoken in the ancient Kemetic language, the Medjugorje of our ancient ancestors of the Nile Valley. And as always, Hotep, peace, Rastafari, African power for all African people. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time on the 20th of February for Overstanding Voodoo with Mama Mambo Ama Mazama. Tendam Wadi.